It just so happens that when we hear Playboy, or see the famous rabbit emblem on various accessories and other items, images of a better life instantly come to mind. Long-legged, busty beauties in bikinis, $400 bottles of Cristal champagne, spotless and polished limousines, and stunning mansions in Miami with huge pools and lively company. Few runway models stir men around the world as much as Playboy girls do. What most people don't know is that the first issue of the legendary men's magazine was published 68 years ago, and the cover of the December 1953 issue featured none other than the incomparable Marilyn Monroe. Since then, much has changed, but even despite all of that, from the moment Playboy's first issue was released, it spread around the world, earning the reputation of a magazine that all others aspire to. The main character of this video, Hugh Hefner, is rightfully considered a pioneer of the sexual revolution. Women adore him, and it's not just about his multi-million-dollar fortune and the empire he built. Even today, Playboy's standards of female beauty have undergone significant changes under the magazine's leadership. At the same time, however, it was Playboy that shaped and changed those very standards worldwide. But since our focus here is purely business-related, this video will only discuss the business side and the success of an ordinary person, no matter what brand they represent. The founder of the famous glossy magazine is the American Hugh Marston Hefner, who was born long ago on April 9, 1926, in the city of Chicago. The atmosphere in the family was extremely conservative. The boy's parents, Glenn Lucius and Grace Caroline, were strict people who forbade going to movie theaters and other entertainment venues. The only family activity was attending the local church on weekends. Perhaps it was this strict upbringing that sowed the seeds of rebellion in the young and intelligent boy's heart. From a young age, Hugh showed interest in creativity. He wasn't particularly interested in lessons at school, but he enjoyed writing articles and dreamed of becoming a journalist. He participated in the school newspaper and had a talent for creating caricatures and cartoons. Despite this, no one could have imagined that in just a few years, the world would know him as Hugh Hefner, nicknamed Hef. Even as a young man, Hugh stood out among his peers with his good looks and slender figure, which earned him the attention of girls. Besides girls, he was also interested in cars, loved sports, and secretly dreamed of a luxurious life, although at that time it was just a dream. Reality was different. After finishing school, Hefner joined the army, fought in World War II, and simultaneously wrote for a small military newspaper. Upon returning from service, he decided to build his life and enrolled at the University of Illinois, majoring in psychology. His university studies had a significant impact on him. Despite his military service and experiences in the war, Hugh remained as sensitive and emotional as he was before. While at university, he studied human behavior and psychology, and it was there that his dream of creating his own magazine began to take shape. However, to make this dream a reality, Hugh needed a certain amount of money. To get closer to the publishing world, he took a job as an editor at Shaft magazine, where he worked on humorous cartoons. Later, at the age of 23, he married a beautiful former classmate named Mildred, who soon gave birth to their two children, daughter Christy and son David. At that time, everything in his life seemed to be well-ordered. Home, family, work, friends, and stability. Perhaps his dream of creating a legendary magazine would never have come true if not for a stroke of good fortune. By that time, Hefner had worked at several publishing houses, eventually settling in the advertising department of Esquire magazine. However, despite working for such a prestigious publisher, the salary wasn't enough to support a family of four, and they were living in a small rented apartment, scraping by from paycheck to paycheck. Realizing that his workload didn't match his income, Hugh went to his superiors with a simple request for a raise, but was turned down. Angry and frustrated, he immediately handed in his resignation, determined never to work for someone else again, and to launch his own creation, a magazine that would be talked about for generations of men. He was already well informed about glossy journalism, ambitious enough, and prepared for independent ventures. However, as always, the challenge was the same: money. Driven by the need to quickly find a means of survival, Hugh began to regret his impulsive decision to quit his job. He started searching for work again. But it was during one of these job interviews that something happened, something that would fundamentally change his life and the lives of millions around the world. While waiting for an interview, he noticed a postcard on the publisher's desk featuring a semi-nude Marilyn Monroe. At that moment, a brilliant idea struck him. He would create his own magazine, aimed at mature, successful men, featuring interesting articles with a slightly playful tone. That evening, he returned home, unable to shake the idea from his mind. However, he didn't share it with his wife, unsure of how she would react. The next morning, he realized he was ready to act, and the first thing he needed to do was find investors. Hefner had only $600 of his own savings, and his 58-year-old mother, Caroline Hefner, contributed $1,000 from her own savings. Additionally, local investors, friends of Hugh, who found the idea quite tempting, put in $8,000. With the money problem solved, the next task was to choose a name for the magazine. As the saying goes, a ship is only as good as the name you give it. The name had to be simple, but at the same time, attractive and alluring. The first idea was to name the magazine Stag Party, Bachelor Party, with a logo featuring a deer in a tuxedo. Other options considered were Gentleman, Sir, Top Hat, and Pan. However, the owner of another men's magazine called Stag threatened to sue if Hugh chose that name. Then, a friend of Hefner's, whose mother worked for a car company called Playboy Automats, suggested the name Playboy. Hugh thought it sounded perfect, catchy and understandable, so he decided to stick with it. At the same time, the artist Arthur Paul, the first art director of Playboy, quickly redrew the deer into the now famous bunny with a bow tie. After all, a sleek, black, long-eared bunny with a bow tie perfectly symbolized the primal instincts that arise in men's minds at the sight of a sexy, beautiful woman. Interestingly, Playboy has several interpretations. The word play means to have fun or play, while boy refers to a man. Over time, the term playboy came to refer to young, sexually active men who are fond of being surrounded by many beautiful women. As for the magazine's production, Hefner didn't have a dedicated office. The layout, drawings, editing, and assembling of the first issue were all done in the kitchen of his small apartment. By that time, his wife had already learned about this somewhat controversial endeavor. When it came to printing and distribution, Hugh decided to approach established publishing houses. After paying for the printing of the first issue and arranging its distribution to kiosks, he got to work. While thinking about how to attract potential readers, Hefner recalled how, during his army days, soldiers would pin photos of movie starlets above their beds. This inspired the idea to feature a beautiful woman on the magazine's centerfold, allowing readers to later admire her by hanging the picture on their walls. Many young men ended up doing exactly that, and this concept remains popular to this day. Hefner remembered an old acquaintance, John Baumgarten, the owner of a Chicago-based company that produced pin-up calendars. Through a previous work connection, Hefner was able to buy a photograph of a young, relatively unknown actress named Jean Mortensen, who later became famous under the pseudonym Marilyn Monroe. For $50, Hefner acquired her photo and decided to use it on the cover of the first Playboy issue, alongside a short story by Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. What happened next was beyond even Hefner's wildest dreams. The success of the magazine exceeded all expectations. The first issue, featuring Marilyn Monroe on the cover, was released in December 1953, priced at just 50 cents. It sold 52,000 copies. The demand was so high that they had to print more copies in a rush to meet the skyrocketing demand. This allowed Hefner not only to finance the printing of the second issue, but also to start thinking seriously about the future success of his new creation. This fortunate beginning marked the birth of an entertainment empire, Hefner's empire, known as Playboy. From there, things took off. At first, it was a painful struggle to introduce a magazine with such open content into the conservative culture of the 1950s. Hefner had to fight for freedom of speech and the right for Playboy to exist. The magazine featured work by banned writers, supported the release of those imprisoned under repressive sexual legislation, and even clashed with the FBI and the church. I never considered Playboy a magazine solely about sex. To me, it has always been about a lifestyle, of which sex is just one part. Playboy is more about wealth and luxury, about exciting parties and fun. In some way, Playboy calls for people to be free and pay attention to others, Hefner once said. Considering that the glossy pages included interviews with stars like Nabokov, Hemingway, Arthur Miller, and Jean-Paul Sartre, his statement was undoubtedly true. In Hefner's view, the images of nude women in erotic poses were merely a hook to attract a broad readership. The real idea was to present readers with thought-provoking content, interviews with celebrities, and discussions on global issues. However, it turned out that the photos of semi-naked women became far more popular among the male audience than the deep conversations. The first model to take the plunge was Margie Harrison, a girl involved in the distribution of the magazine. She became Miss January in 1954 and graced the second issue of the magazine, earning the distinction of being the first Playboy Playmate of the Month. By 1955, Hefner had introduced the now iconic Playmate of the Month section, featuring not just movie stars, but everyday girls next door. Hefner's approach was truly revolutionary. It turned out that beautiful women weren't just in Hollywood. They were all around, real and approachable. Hefner was the first to feature not only professional models and established beauties in his magazine, but also ordinary, attractive women who had no prior fame or experience with photo shoots for such publications. He gave all women the chance to be featured on the cover of his magazine, and this played a huge role in shaping the magazine's image. Aspiring models began lining up for a chance to be featured in Playboy. Initially, the title of Playmate of the Month didn't come with a cash prize, and the criteria for winning were rather vague. For instance, Marilyn Waltz, the Playmate of the Month for February 1954, was showered with fan mail and adoration beyond what any of her peers could imagine. Yet she never officially received the coveted title. After the success of Marilyn Waltz, several other models basked in the glory of being labeled as the most popular and desirable women. The first model to officially win the title of Playmate of the Year was Ellen Stratton in 1960, marking the start of a long-standing tradition. One of the most famous Playboy covers came in 1972, featuring Swedish model Lena Soderberg. This image became iconic in the tech world, as it was widely used in scientific research to test image processing algorithms, and her photograph was one of the first to be digitally transmitted over ARPANET, the prototype of the modern internet. As Hefner's empire grew, he began hosting the legendary Playboy parties, which completed his public persona. These events were known for their hordes of scantily clad women, expensive alcohol, luxury cars, and wild fun. The women who graced the pages of the magazine were affectionately dubbed Playmates. Although Hefner loved parties, he admitted that this image was necessary to promote his magazine. Meanwhile, Playboy's success skyrocketed. By the early 1970s, the company's annual net profit had reached $11 million, around $100 million in today's terms, and the magazine's circulation exceeded 7 million copies. In 1972, the first foreign-language edition of Playboy was launched, starting with the German version, followed by French, Brazilian, Italian, Japanese, and many others. Playboy mania spread across the globe, and the magazine quickly cemented its status as a cultural icon. It's worth noting that Hugh Hefner knew how to enjoy life. He not only founded one of the most popular men's magazines, but also created the world's most famous harem, centered around the Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles, California. This grand estate, located near Barney Hills, hosted more celebrities than any nightclub or restaurant ever had. Over time, Playboy expanded beyond just print. It grew into a media empire that included a modeling agency, a limousine rental service, a television company, casinos, and even resort and hotel businesses. All of this contributed greatly to Hefner's success and wealth. The creator and owner of Playboy, Hugh Hefner, earned billions of dollars from his empire. And as part of his brand's promotion, he even launched a TV show, Playboy Penthouse, featuring the Playboy Mansion. This show gave the world a glimpse of life inside the mansion, where an aging Hefner lived with numerous young women. As you might imagine, the show was a massive, scandalous hit. However, in the early 1980s, Playboy's empire took a major financial hit, losing nearly 45% of its revenue, amounting to $363 million, largely due to issues with its gambling business. Additionally, Playboy began facing public criticism, particularly from women's rights organizations. By 1985, the magazine's circulation in the US had dropped to 4 million copies, and a commission established by then US President Ronald Reagan required that certain publications, including Playboy, be sold only in specialized stores. As a result, the magazine was removed from thousands of distribution points. At the same time, Hefner's personal life suffered as well. His first wife left him during this tumultuous period. Although he was single for a while, he soon met another significant woman in his life, Barbie Benton, with whom he was romantically involved for nearly 10 years, from 1968 to 1976. However, Benton never became his wife. When they first met, the 18-year-old brunette shyly remarked, "I've never dated anyone over 24. Hefner, who was 42 at the time, replied, "That's okay. Neither have I." While Hefner wasn't known for deceiving the women in his life, he did slip up once. In the spring of 1971, while dating Barbie Benton, who lived with him in his Los Angeles mansion, another love entered his life, Karen Christie, a stunning blonde who moved into his Chicago apartment. For several years, Hefner secretly flew between the two cities, managing to keep both relationships hidden from each woman. But, as they say, secrets always come to light. In the spring of 1974, Time magazine published an exposé, leading to both women leaving him simultaneously. Although Barbie later returned, their relationship was irreparably damaged. Despite this chaotic lifestyle, Hefner made a few more attempts at marriage. In 1989, he married Kimberly Conrad, one of the few women to officially become Mrs. Hefner. They tied the knot in 1989, and exactly 1 year later, on Playboy's anniversary, Kimberly gave birth to their son. In 1991, they had their second child. Thanks to her, life in the Playboy Mansion became a bit more subdued, and the number of models living in the mansion significantly decreased. In 1999, the couple separated, but didn't officially divorce until 2009, after 20 years of marriage. Conrad used her fame to become an active advocate for animal rights. By the 2000s, Hefner lived in his Los Angeles Playboy Mansion with 7 women, aged 18 to 28. When asked who his favorite guest at the mansion was, Hefner didn't hesitate to name Pamela Anderson. In 2010, Hefner proposed to Crystal Harris, and they were married in 2012 after being in a relationship for 3 years. At the wedding, Harris expressed her wish to remain with Hefner for the rest of his life, and indeed, she did. Upon his passing, however, the millionaire left his widow relatively little, as most of his estate and shared assets were protected by a prenuptial agreement. Nonetheless, Hefner made sure to remember his previous wives and loved ones in his will. The money left by Hefner was more than enough for everyone mentioned in his will. It specified that part of his inheritance would go to several charitable foundations, as well as a portion to the University of Southern California. Today, the Playboy empire is managed by his daughter from his first marriage. Hefner himself passed away on September 27, 2017, at the age of 91. For those unaware, Hugh Hefner has not one but 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His first star was unveiled in 1980 for his significant contribution to American television. The second was added in 2006 by moguls Johnny Brendan and Jack Daniels at the Palms Hotel. Over the nearly 70-year history of the magazine, hundreds of women have graced its cover, including popular actresses such as Sharon Stone, Angelina Jolie, Demi Moore, and Nicole Kidman. Singers and models also frequently appeared, with Pamela Anderson famously featuring on the cover in 1989, long before her plastic surgeries. She continued to model for Playboy numerous times afterward, successfully leveraging her popularity through the magazine. Anderson even starred on Playboy TV, stirring both intrigue and controversy. Even at 54, she remains one of the magazine's most attractive models. American supermodel Cindy Crawford became the first supermodel to pose nude for Playboy, and the magazine listed her among the top 100 sexiest stars of the 20th century. Another iconic cover was graced by British model Kate Moss in 2014 for the UK edition of the magazine. Despite her modest height of only 164 centimeters, Moss was named one of the sexiest women in the world. One of the few Russian celebrities to pose for Playboy was Daria Astafieva, who appeared in the magazine in 2009. After moving to the US, Astafieva lived in Hefner's mansion and wasn't shy about showing off her beauty. She even spoke about her friendship with Hefner, expressing tender feelings toward him. Of course, Angelina Jolie, a stunning beauty and mother of many, was also a favorite of the magazine, appearing in Playboy 3 times for the American edition. Interestingly, Jolie, who famously stole Brad Pitt from his former wife Jennifer Aniston, has also posed for other magazines that publish revealing photos. Today, Playboy is one of the most recognizable brands in the world, with regional editions in more than 30 countries. The magazine has featured hundreds of well-known actresses, athletes, and celebrities. Hefner successfully transformed the iconic bunny logo into a multi-billion-dollar industry. The famous rabbit head with a bow tie can now be seen on glasses, clothing, hats, perfumes, and much more, bringing in substantial profits for the company. As for Hefner himself, many describe him as a relentless workaholic who built his entire empire with his own hands. Even at the age of 91, he worked tirelessly. The extravagant bachelor image and wild parties were part of his brand, though in reality, it wasn't as big a part of his personal life as people might think. So, that's the story of Playboy's success, a brand that has thrived for over 70 years. It all began in the kitchen of a small apartment with a budget of just $9,600. While some might have used that sum to buy a nice car, Hefner turned it into a multi-billion-dollar business. Feel free to share your thoughts on what you've heard. But that's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it. See you next time.